People who clean up after festivals and similar events. What's the best and worst things you have found left behind? Not a cleaning person, but I saw a prosthetic leg left at the end of a metal festival. I've cleaned up and found entire cooking sets and chairs. I found a cooler and $135 in the lot after a fish show. Worst is definitely a tie between the 5-liter water carrier filled with urine or the lidded saucepan containing a single, fairly large poo. I was working at a festival, although not doing cleanup, and stayed till the day after. The amount of tents people leave behind, brand new tents. Basically, people just buy new stuff for that festival and then can't be bothered to bring it home, dispose of it properly. I ended up with a brand new 10-person tent. Thanks to some other people's laziness. I helped out some hippie friends of mine running this little hippie festival called Chronophonium. About 500 people camping for 3 days. Lots of themes around sustainability, recycling and whatnot. Almost everyone left brand new tents in disheveled states all over the place. You can buy a cheap tent for next to nothing at the warehouse, New Zealand's Walmart. I reckon people are packing up to go on the last day hungover as in they just wanna mentally write off everything and get home ASAP. These same people would have launched into monologues about wastefulness from big box stores and sustainable reuse at any other time. When you're hungover and coming down from a 3-day bender, principles go out the window. I did a clean at a 3-day music festival once. Literally the first night I had to clean one of the portable shower cubicles because someone had in the corner and stuck a cocktail umbrella in it. Edit. Thanks for the awards. It goes without saying that I didn't take another festival job. Work. Also, nice chirpin'. Disgusting that someone would do that, but the umbrella bit made me laugh. My dad used to be the guy in charge of renting out the Knights of Columbus Hall. Per policy, he had to be on site during the event, but would clean up after. The cleanup would usually be the next day, and I'd come along to help. The best thing we found was a $500 tip left behind by the father of the bride after a wedding reception with a little thank you note. The worst was finding the punch bowl the next day after someone had puked in it and put a lid over it. I'm pretty sure it had been spiked with something pretty strong before that. 2. Bottle of rum. Lots and lots of drugs. Watches. Phones. Perfectly good clothes. Eddie boots. Wallets, cash, etc. Worst is tents. As in, abandoning your tent but doing a massive in it before you go so it can't be reused. A heavily used DLDO. Stuck. Tip up. On a tent stake. Do dildos have built-in odometers? After fish shows there's a group of volunteers that clean up the lot. It's called Green Crew. The first time I did it I wasn't fully aware what the point was. We got gloves and a trash bag, then spread out on one side of the lot and walked across it picking up. When we got to the other side, everyone was way faster than me getting to the other side. We were told to consolidate bags. I go to pour mine into the guy next to me. He goes, "Ooh, dude. We only pick up returnable and recyclable stuff." As I poured trash and glow sticks and like food and into his bag of recyclables. Did it once. As a fundraiser for a youth organization. And collectively we found UACUT 3010 mobile phones. And this was during the days when it was a somewhat luxury to have a phone. Clarification edit. I didn't personally find and keep all of the above. This is what was found by the group of us, which was around 40 teenagers. I worked for a summer driving the buses and cleaning them for a summerfest. Never found much left on the buses except out of vomit. Except this one time we were walking through the lot tallying how many buses had a certain type of radio for the company, and I found a money pouch left on the bus by one of the girls whose job it was to collect payments from those riding the buses to the fairgrounds. In those days I was a poor college student and I choked when I saw there was around $2,000 in there. But I was also a good girl and turned it in. Apparently they had been set to fire her and sue her for the stolen cash. So I saved her from a criminal record. But of course she still lost her job for being careless. I never did get even a thank you from the company. I cleaned up for an event once, and it was an event where you weren't allowed to bring your own alcohol in, so they can get you to buy it from the event itself and whatnot. So cops were taking people's alcohol. Cool. That's fine. I was cleaning up and 2 cops walked over and asked if I was 18. I showed them my license to prove I was. And they gave me almost $1,000 of untouched alcohol that they'd confiscated from people trying to sneak it in. Bottles of vodka and tequila. A lot of beer and rum and a bunch of ciders, all given to me cause I was a volunteer and not getting paid otherwise. Was I great? Edit. For everyone asking. I'm an usher at my neighborhood movie theater, so IDK if this counts, but I found a plastic bag under a seat with 6 guppies swimming around inside, so I kept the guppies for myself, lol. Not a rave. But when I lived at a party house in my early 20s, I once cleaned up after a big night and found a cigarette with lipstick on the end you typically light. The lipstick wearer had smoked it backwards and inhaled nearly the entire filter. I was told to cut everything off of the tree of happiness, where everyone was told to write something down that made them happy and tie it to the tree. It was in a public park, so they all had to be removed. And I put them into a jar because I didn't think I should just throw them away. So now I still have what I call the jar of happiness. Still don't know what to do with it. Full cases of beer that people can't be bothered to carry. Weed that people forget. Entire tents in good condition. We were too wasted to leave a music festival outside of LA once. So we just hung out and waited for everyone else to take off. When my BF and I finally got straight enough to pack up, we walked through a wasteland of expensive brand name tents and chairs. We put our stuff away and then literally just walked around picking stuff up. The people cleaning had already picked through all the good stuff and were literally filling wheelbarrows full of things. We ended up scoring a moose jaw 8-person tent that was barely used. I found a few pair of designer glasses and a crap ton of other clothes like hoodies and very nice jeans. My BF found a really expensive folding knife and a brand new Canon 5D that had one picture of someone's butt on it. He found a coin purse that had $300 in it and no ID under a styrofoam cooler. We also found a Yeti cooler that was filled with crushed hard seltzer cans and a poo that we cleaned out. We packed his SUV literally to the brim with expensive stuff and have been using it all for years. Put tent. It's a 5-gallon bucket filled with laundry detergent with a toilet seat on top placed in a cheap tent. Imagine open that sucker up after 4 days of 100-degree weather. Dead body. It was an apparent OD. Booze and drugs. Also a nitrous tank. Oh, by far the worst was a group of friends, easily 10-15 of them by the Aussie evidence, who had a tent that they used as our bathroom so they didn't have to go to the portaloos. Fully just chat in the corner and worked their way out over the days. It was horrendous. I don't understand how anyone could have gone in there with the smell. Eater. Plus it was a 3-day festival and we got to the tent on day 2 or 3 of post-festival cleanup. So it had been marinating for up to 6 days. In the dead heat of the Australian summer. I lost a lot of hope for humanity through that job. I was a volunteer at a large festival. Though I didn't work cleaning the camping area. But I did speak to one of the scavengers who roamed the camping area afterwards. He said the best loot was car batteries and Euro pallets. Turns out there are hardware and construction companies who will pay you a deposit for those things. He also found tons of beer. Yeah. IDK what a Euro pallet is. But car batteries have a scrap value. It's like 60 cents a pound or something, and even a small car battery weighs around 20 pounds. I was jumping for joy when my elderly neighbor paid me $200 to clean out his garage and said I could keep anything I wanted. This crazy mofo had 20 car batteries stacked up in the corner behind all the junk, as well as like 50 pounds of brass and copper pipe fittings. Brass and copper have a scrap value of $2 lb or more. I made like $600 for 1 day's work. Not a worker or cleaner, but the morning we woke up to leave Bonnaroo, One member of our group found an 800-gram chunk of opium on the ground outside his tent. It was amazing. Super high quality and we couldn't really believe it. He gave each of us a hunk and kept the rest. And surprisingly it actually was the catalyst for him to slide into opiate addiction and change his life forever. I often wonder how life would have turned out for him if he had just looked the other way. Not quite what was asked, but I have an uncle who runs a 2-day festival. It is held on tribal land. At the end, people from the tribe were ready to clean up after the weekend festivities. That was part of the contract. After last act he gets up on stage and asks the festival goers to help clean up after themselves. The crowd left him clean. No cleanup needed after. So guess clean grounds after a weekend festival may count. Used to work in a nightclub and we had an event for a large group of related companies. It was their Christmas party or something. 4 AM rolls around and everyone leaves slowly. As usual, grumpy about having to leave. And once everyone's gone we find a pair of men's dress shoes and a pink. We'd always find pipes. Condoms. In various states. Gross. Once I found a gift card mixed in with the detritus next to the stage. Checked the 1-800 number and it still had $100 value. But I don't know if it is the best or worst thing. But one time after the last concert, after the bands left and the sound and light contractor had packed out and left, we found a girl under the stage. Seriously hungover and looking like hell but still alive. Apparently, she crawled up under there at some point and passed out. Slept for 6 hours. One of the house crew loaned her a cell phone and she called someone to come pick her up. Off she went to rock another day. I worked as a sound engineer for an under 21 club in Alaska for a couple years. You'd find all sorts of stuff left behind after shows. For some reason nearly every other show some scene kid would decide to plug their phone into charge somewhere and forget about it. We'd also find all sorts of drugs. Mostly weed or pills like Adderall or Vicodin. But also oftentimes half-empty bottles of Thai booze. Very often pints of Monarch vodka or R&R whiskey. Whippet canisters. 4 locusts. This was during the original formula years. And empty bottles of Robitussin Max Cough. Back in the days when it was all DXM. I think the best thing we ever found, though, was a Mesa Boogie triple rectifier. A $2,500 amp that was probably going for $1,700 new at the time. Me, the promoter, and my guitarist called literally every guitarist that had played there that week to try to get it back to them. None of them claimed it. So my guitarist got a new amp out of the deal. After this thread, I would volunteer to clean up after Coachella. I feel like the money, clothes, phones, jewelry would 100% make up for the gross bits. One giant fiberglass Mayor McCheesehead. Collected tents and sleeping bags for a homeless charity. Also picked up hundreds of cans of beer and cider. Put the cans in a bath at home in sterilizing fluid. Then sold them cheap at a party as a fundraiser for the charity. Lived near a beach that had festivals during the summer. Some locals would volunteer to clean up the place. But they would look for leftovers and things left by people or at worst steal what they could. But the biggest haul was from a group of tourists who were too lazy and drink to clean up after themselves, so they left their tent when they went home. It had chairs, a couch, a grill, and 3 coolers filled with alcohol and meat. The person who got it shared the food and drinks with his neighbor and sold the tent for a good penny. My favorite story is someone finding a giant teddy bear with strap-ons on it found inside a porta potty. I've said this before, but I worked electric forest one year and was appalled at how much trash and vandalism is left behind. Sure, you had such a spiritual, enlightening experience and felt so connected to the earth after tripping balls, littering, and eating cold processed ravioli out of a can for 3 days straight. I have a few friends who used to do that. And as others have said, tents everywhere. And other goods. Generally the rich foreigners come to have a good time. Buy their stuff locally. Can't be asked to carry it back home. And just leave it there. Just don't forget to clean the puke, drugs, and come from them first. My partner is a sound engineer and here's some things he's found. A cable covered in pee and a suspicious white powder. Bags of said white powder in the bathroom. Apparently someone trashed the stalls. The giant pink double-ended SX toy. Bongos bingo. And finally poo. Just there in the middle of the room. Someone had taken a dump during the event right in the middle of the crowd. My mom routinely cleaned the tailgate areas after football games. She pretty much brought home everything you'd expect to find at a tailgate. I remember lots of chairs, cabana type things, a few coolers, and some other random things. After a game day was kind of like Christmas. Sometimes stuff was broken but often could be easily fixed, so my mom would bring it home. At one game we ended up with a ton of umbrellas because they weren't allowed in the stadium and people left them at the entrance. My mate took side jobs like this to help get by during festival seasons. Collectively in 1 year he found about $2,500 of spare change notes, phones, watches and other accessories like jewelry, tents, and once he found someone's handbag. He gave all the items to the local police. The money he couldn't put in as it was all spare change. Nothing like a wallet with a big sum in it. So not much the police could have done there. Who's come to pick up 20p? Close bracket. Apart from 5 phones. Nobody reclaimed any of the items. Or the handbag that had a phone, necklace and a leadless wallet with £250 in it, so, as is the law here in the UK, he received all these items for free after a set amount of time. I used to work at a recording studio. And one night I had to clean up after a Migos and Gucci main session. Gucci left a pile of discarded chicken wings bones on the floor. Migos left about half an ounce of weed on the desk. Tampons. Like in the middle of a dancing frenzy someone had to yank that mother out and bang on the dance floor. What a time to be alive. Small tree fully decorated with used condoms. At an event where the average age is around 19 years old, 16-25. It was the introductory week for college. It's jokingly not allowed to have sex with other introduction students, so people snuck away. Used to help out at a friend's campground. It sounds stupid but food waste. People would toss fired chicken bones and melon rinds into the bush, which eventually attracted a bear, who had to be shot. People were upset that the bear had to be killed, but still kept tossing food into the bushes. 10 camping chairs and some coolers that were left behind that have lasted me for years. Knew someone who cleaned a park after a big surf championship. He found an expensive bottle of whiskey addressed to the winner of the competition and kept it. Did it one time at a small festival, about 1,500 people around at a time. Lots of coming and going though, and no sleepover. You had to go to a hotel, hostel, etc. Best. A bag with $2,000 cash was kept with the organizers for 2 weeks. Then they split it between us volunteers. Got $400. Worst. A child. 4 years old. Crying. Looking for mommy. Couldn't tell me his address. Police didn't prioritize showing up there, so I ended up playing with him and telling him stories to distract him. Finally, we get a call from the organizers. The grandma called and was gonna pick him up. Grandma brought me a box of chocolates as a thank you for looking out for him. I've been going to a small anime gaming festival. Like 300 people max. Every summer for 8 years. Every year multiple SX toys are found during the cleanup. I found my favorite cardigan while cleaning up after a country show. It was in the grass. All trampled and covered in beer and dirt. But it was my size and in otherwise good condition. I took it home. Washed it like 4 times. And now I wear it often. When cleaning up after Boomtown we found a tent with nothing inside except a covered in glitter. I used to walk around the raves and look on the ground with a flashlight. Found a multitude of great things. In one night I would find a baggies ecstasy pills, cocaine plus assorted drugs, 30 plus lighters, hundreds of dollars in cash, jewelry and so many articles of clothing. That was the average each weekend. I've seen the crew clean up after Coachella and it is amazing. They light it up like daylight. They have machines that are like gold ball removers drive around and suck up the garbage while an army of workers in lines catch everything. In less than an hour the fields are swept clean and reset for the next day. It's like a military operation. After AC/DC there was a sea of blinking devil horns that were given out and tossed. Not a worker but the neighbors on our camping ground once left their entire chemical toilet behind. Can't say they didn't give a tent in perfect condition. Had a fish pattern on it and I didn't think any further other than I need that, took it to my next festival and bugger me if those fish didn't glow in the dark. Wasn't working. But attending. This was at a Korn concert in the 90s. I was around 16ish. We got pretty beat up in the mosh pit and decided to go to a less crowded area in the back. It was cleaner and carpeted too. So we sat down to rest for a bit. My wallet was in my back pocket and I took it out so it wasn't digging into my ass and placed it on the floor inside my crossed legs. Completely forgot about it. Got up, continued to have fun at the concert, then on the way home realized it was gone. 4 days later it arrived in the mail with a note from one of the custodial staff. I was surprised to say the least. Not only were all of my cards intact, had a couple gift cards and my health card etc. Didn't have a driver's license yet. But all of my money was in there too. Wasn't much. $30 or $40-ish. Honestly I was expecting it to be gone. Which really I would have been fine with. Thank you custodian person from the 90s at Arrow Hall in Toronto. You rock. Money and drugs. Lots of money and drugs. I'm an event manager for corporate conferences and trade shows. Best thing I've seen left behind was from a large well-known medical company. They left an unopened brand new defibrillator that you'd see in an emergency room. When I called and told them they had left it behind they said to keep it. So naturally I googled the item. Retail cost $5k. Worst item. Nothing too crazy fortunately. Probably some used hair weaves or cheap dildos. Adult industry shows. I was part of the organizers of a symposium for scholars back in college. After using the auditorium, as courtesy to the BLDG admin, we made a quick sweep and pick up small trash saucily to find out a used condom. It was weird. BC lights were on throughout the vent and it was jam-packed. Restrooms were outside so that really baffled us. I grew up next to a half-dozen resort destinations on a slow meandering river. The kind where people camp, rent canoes, kayaks, rafts, then drink their weight in beer while floating. Every Sunday is a parade of hungover tourists just ready to get home. After festivals it's 10 times worse. I have gotten hundreds of tents, chairs, ice chests, grills, hammocks, sleeping bags, etc. I have donated a bunch to Girl Boy Scouts, homes, shelters, friends. It's amazing what people leave behind. It's not all good though. Occasionally there is surprise puke, other bodily fluids inside. Literally anything you can think of. Dildos. Strange art. Anything a human can secrete. Best time to go is Saturday and Sunday night. Just take a walk in high traffic areas with your head down. You'll find lots of drugs and cash. The craziest thing I've ever came across though was just a huge coincidence. I was at a festival about 750 kilometers from my hometown. It was Sunday midnight and I was just dancing through the darkness on half a noz of mushrooms. I noticed a flash of white out of the corner of my eye near the forest's edge. Turns out it was someone's provincial ID card. Not just anyone's. It belonged to a girl from my hometown I haven't seen in years. Given her lifestyle it's not strange she lost her ID while up at a festival. It was just a crazy coincidence that the only ID I've ever found in years of festival going. Far from home. At a festival with 9,000 people. Happened to be someone I knew pretty well. Worked as a carny a few seasons. The zipper operator would straight up guard his ride's area to loot it in the morning after its use. Many cell phones, wallets, cash and tons of change. He knew how to operate it so well that he could spin certain tubs, full of riders, excessively if they looked drunk or like they might be unwilling donors. He made more in ground scores than he made operating and moving the ride. In high school we would have to clean the college stands and the areas just outside of the stadium after football games as a requirement for marching band. A lot of cash. I always take a flashlight to outdoor shows at the park. At the end of the show, I pick up my things and then walk around with the flashlight to treasure hunt. I've found lots of sunglasses but mostly trash.